it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen.
The Hidden Agenda by Darius McCorkindale. Part 1. The Bunker. The late autumn sun cast long skeletal shadows through the dense forest, its feeble light barely penetrating the thick canopy of gnarled branches and withered leaves. A crisp chill hung in the air, mingling with the earthy scent of damp soil and decaying foliage. The forest, remote and untamed, exuded a sense of foreboding isolation, its silence interrupted only by the occasional rustle of unseen creatures. Alex adjusted the straps of his backpack, the newness of the gear betraying his inexperience. An avid enthusiast of the great outdoors, Alex had always dreamed of exploring uncharted trails and immersing himself in the serenity of nature. Today's hike, a spontaneous decision, was supposed to be a simple, rejuvenating escape from the bustle of city life. With a deep breath, Alex stepped off the beaten path, venturing into the heart of the wilderness. The trail, well, if it could be called that, was barely visible, an overgrown whisper of a path winding through the thick undergrowth. Alex's excitement mounted with every step, each twist and turn revealing hidden pockets of beauty. A cluster of mushrooms glowing faintly in the dim light, the intricate patterns of frost on a fallen log. The deeper Alex ventured, the more the forest seemed to close in, its trees standing like silent sentinels, their twisted branches forming a natural cathedral. Hours passed unnoticed as Alex wandered further into the woods. The sun, now a distant glow behind the canopy, signaled the approach of evening. The excitement of exploration began to wane, though, replaced by a creeping unease. Alex paused, realizing with a jolt of anxiety that the surroundings had become unfamiliar. There were no markers, no signs of a trail, just an endless expanse of trees stretching in every direction. Determined to remain calm, Alex tried to retrace his steps, but the forest seemed to conspire against him. Each turn led to another unfamiliar sight, the oppressive silence amplifying his growing fear. The realization dawned. He was lost, stranded in a vast, unforgiving wilderness, with night rapidly approaching. As Alex struggled to find a way out, a glint of metal caught his eye, partially hidden beneath a tangle of roots and fallen leaves. Curiosity piqued, he brushed aside the debris, revealing a rusted hatch set into the forest floor. The hatch, incongruous in its natural surroundings, sent a shiver down Alex's spine. Desperation and curiosity waged a silent battle within him, but the need for shelter ultimately won out. Taking a deep breath, Alex grasped the handle and pulled, and a sense of foreboding emanated from it. Alex's mind raced with questions. What was this doing here in the middle of nowhere? Was it some old storm shelter, or perhaps an abandoned storage space? So, driven by a mix of curiosity and the pressing need for shelter as nightfall approached, Alex made that decision. His fingers trembled as he gripped the cold metal handle and gave it a tentative tug. The hatch resisted at first, creaking in protest before finally yielding with a grating screech, revealing a dark, narrow stairway descending into the earth. Alex hesitated, peering into the abyss below. The air that wafted up was stale, carrying with it the scent of damp and decay. Despite the fear gnawing at his insides, the prospect of staying above ground, exposed and vulnerable in the growing darkness, seemed far worse. Gathering his resolve, Alex turned on his flashlight and began his cautious descent into the unknown depths. Each step down the stairway felt like a journey into another world, the darkness swallowing the light from the forest above. The walls, rough and damp, closed in around Alex, intensifying the claustrophobic atmosphere. His breath echoed softly in the confined space, a stark reminder of his isolation. Reaching the bottom, Alex found himself in a narrow corridor lined with concrete walls. And the silence was almost tangible, broken only by the distant, faint hum of some unseen machinery. His heart pounding, Alex moved forward, driven by a blend of fear and an insatiable need to uncover the secrets hidden within this underground bunker. Little did he know, the true horror was only just beginning to reveal itself. The corridor seemed endless, a dank passage that twisted and turned in unpredictable directions. Alex moved cautiously, each footfall echoing ominously in the stale air. The flickering light from his flashlight cast eerie shadows on the rough concrete walls, which were lined with rusted metal shelves and old dusty crates. The atmosphere was thick with a sense of abandonment and decay. But as Alex explored further, he began to uncover relics and documents that hinted at the bunker's sinister past. Old medical equipment, yellowed papers with incomprehensible technical jargon, and faded maps of Europe lay scattered about. The deeper Alex ventured, the more evident it became that this place had once been the site of clandestine activities. Turning a corner, Alex found himself in a larger room, its walls covered with photographs and newspaper clippings. The dim light revealed images that sent chills down his spine. Black and white photos of stern-faced men in military uniforms, juxtaposed with modern images of an elderly man who bore a striking resemblance to one of the figures from the wartime pictures. The man, recognizable by his piercing eyes and distinctive scar, was a notorious Nazi war criminal, believed to have died decades ago. Yet here he was, older but unmistakable, a ghost from the past haunting the present. A sense of dread settled over Alex as he scanned the wall, taking in the disturbing implications. Newspaper clippings detailed mysterious disappearances, unexplained deaths, and sightings of strange figures in the area. The realization that this was no ordinary bunker, but rather a place tied to dark historical events, sent a surge of panic through him. The silence was suddenly shattered by a faint, distant noise. Alex froze, straining to identify the sound. A soft, rhythmic tapping, like footsteps. His heart raced as he quickly extinguished his flashlight, plunging the room into darkness. The sense of being watched was overwhelming, the darkness amplifying every fear and suspicion. Moving cautiously, Alex edged away from the wall of photographs, trying to stay as quiet as possible. The tapping grew louder, closer, reverberating through the bunker's narrow corridors. Alex's mind raced, contemplating the possibility of someone or something still inhabiting this forsaken place. Each step felt like a gamble, the fear of being discovered pressing down like a heavy weight on him. In the gloom, Alex stumbled upon another corridor, narrower and darker than the rest. The air was colder here, and the walls seemed to close in even tighter. The unsettling noises continued, now accompanied by an occasional whisper, indistinguishable but filled with malice. Alex's nerves were stretched to their breaking point. Every shadow was a potential threat, every sound a harbinger of doom. Driven by a desperate need to understand and escape, Alex pressed on, his flashlight flickering back to life. The corridor led to another room, this one filled with rows of tanks, each containing a murky fluid and shadowy, indistinct forms. Horrified, Alex realized he was looking at human figures, suspended in some form of stasis. The sight was nauseating, a grotesque confirmation of the bunker's sordid purpose. The noises grew louder, the sense of being watched now almost tangible. Panic surged as Alex turned to leave, only to find his path blocked by a dark figure standing in the doorway. The flashlight flickered, casting brief, terrifying glimpses of the figure's face. A face that matched the elderly man in the photographs. A voice, cold and authoritative, broke the silence. "You shouldn't be here," it said, sending a wave of terror through him. The nightmare was far from over, and the true horror of what he'd uncovered was just beginning to unfold. The dark figure's cold eyes bore into Alex, sending a shiver down his spine. Panic and desperation surged, but instinct took over. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, Alex darted sideways, narrowly avoiding the man's grasp, and bolted down another corridor, the echoes of pursuit ringing in his ears. Gasping for breath, Alex stumbled upon a door half concealed by debris. It seemed more fortified than the others, its metal surface covered in a thick layer of dust. With a swift, desperate motion, Alex pushed it open and slipped inside, quietly pulling the door shut behind him. The room beyond was unlike anything Alex had seen before. Harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, illuminating rows of advanced scientific equipment. Stainless steel tables held an array of strange devices and instruments, their purposes both fascinating and terrifying. On one side of the room, large tanks filled with a murky greenish fluid lined the walls, each containing a human figure in various stages of development. Alex's heart pounded as he approached the tanks, the grotesque forms suspended inside a macabre testament to the horrors being conducted here. Some appeared almost fully formed, their features eerily reminiscent of the faces in the photographs on the wall. The realization struck like a blow. These were clones, replicas of long-dead war criminals, being brought to life through some twisted form of science. A cluttered desk at the far end of the room caught Alex's attention. Sprawled across it were notes, journals, and detailed plans, written in a precise, almost obsessive hand. As Alex flipped through the documents, the horrifying scope of the project became clear. The journals outlined a plan to clone notorious Nazi war criminals, using them to infiltrate and destabilize the US government. The precision and depth of the plan was staggering, hinting at years of meticulous preparation and execution. Among the papers, one journal stood out. Its pages were filled with meticulous entries, charting the progress of the cloning experiments over decades. The most recent entries spoke of success, of the clones being ready for deployment. And then, the most chilling revelation of all, a photograph of the elderly man, accompanied by notes confirming his identity as the mastermind behind the operation. He had not only survived the war, but had continued his heinous work, hidden away in this bunker, driven by a fanatical vision of a resurgent Reich. The gravity of the situation settled heavily on Alex. This was no mere historical curiosity, but an active, present-day threat with potentially catastrophic consequences. The elderly man, now revealed as the leader of this insidious plot, had dedicated his life to perfecting the cloning process and ensuring the survival of his twisted ideology. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps snapped Alex back to the immediate danger. The man, the leader, was close, and escape was the only option. Armed with the horrifying knowledge of the bunker's purpose, Alex knew he had to get out and find a way to expose this plot to the world. But first, he had to survive the next few minutes and escape the clutches of the malevolent figure who dedicated his life to this nightmarish project. Alex's heart raced as he slipped out of the hidden room, clutching a few critical documents that could expose the nightmarish plot. The narrow corridors of the bunker seemed even more oppressive now, the weight of the truth pressing heavily on his shoulders. Every corner turn brought the risk of encountering the elderly Nazi scientist or his loyal followers. Just as Alex reached the main corridor leading to the hatch, a shadow moved in the periphery of his vision. The elderly scientist, flanked by two stern-faced men, emerged from the darkness. His eyes, cold and calculating, locked onto Alex with a mixture of anger and determination. "You have seen too much," the scientist hissed, his voice echoing ominously in the confined space. "I cannot allow you to leave." Before Alex could react, the followers lunged forward. Instinctively, Alex swung a metal rod he'd picked up earlier, striking one of the men across the face. The man stumbled back, clutching his bleeding nose, but the other closed in, grabbing Alex's arm in a vice-like grip. With a swift, desperate motion, Alex jabbed his flashlight into the attacker's eyes, breaking free and sprinting down the corridor. The bunker's maze-like structure worked both for and against Alex. The twists and turns provided momentary cover, but the unfamiliar layout made finding the exit increasingly difficult. The sounds of pursuit grew louder, footsteps pounding and voices shouting in harsh, guttural tones. Alex's breath came in ragged gasps as he darted through the labyrinthine passages, searching for any sign of an escape route. In a narrow corridor lined with old storage rooms, Alex spotted a series of pipes running along the ceiling. This sparked an idea in him. Climbing onto a crate, he grabbed a loose pipe and pulled with all his might. The pipe broke free, releasing a torrent of steam that filled the corridor, obscuring vision and creating a scalding barrier between Alex and his pursuers. Taking advantage of the confusion, Alex pressed on, his mind racing to find a way to stop the scientist and his followers for good. Finally, he stumbled into a large control room filled with archaic machinery and a bewildering array of switches and levers. Desperation fueled his actions as he scanned the control panels, searching for something, anything that could help. The scientist and his men burst into the room just as Alex's eyes landed on a lever marked Emergency Override. Realizing this might be his only chance, Alex lunged for it. The scientist shouted, rushing forward, but it was too late. Alex yanked the lever down with all his strength. A deafening alarm blared throughout the bunker, and the lights flickered wildly. The machinery groaned as a chain reaction began, vibrations shaking the very foundations of the underground complex. The scientist's face twisted in rage and fear as he realized what was happening. With a final desperate effort, Alex grabbed a nearby fire extinguisher and swung it at the scientist, knocking him to the ground. The followers hesitated, torn between helping their leader and fleeing the impending destruction. Alex didn't wait to see what they chose. He bolted from the control room, the walls around him beginning to crack and crumble. The bunker was coming apart, and he had to get out. Navigating the collapsing structure was a race against time. Alex ducked falling debris, leapt over widening cracks in the floor, and pushed through the growing chaos. The sound of the bunker tearing itself apart was deafening, but finally the hatch came into view, a beacon of hope amidst the destruction. With one last surge of energy, Alex climbed the stairs and pushed open the hatch. The cool night air hit his face like a splash of water, a stark contrast to the stifling heat and chaos below. He scrambled out and ran a safe distance from the hatch, collapsing to the ground just as a massive explosion rocked the forest, sending a plume of smoke and debris into the sky. Breathing heavily, Alex watched the destruction of the bunker, knowing that the immediate threat had been neutralized. But the documents clutched in his hand were a reminder that the fight was far from over. The horrifying plot to clone Nazis and overthrow the government had to be exposed, and Alex was now the key to bringing this dark conspiracy into the light. The first light of dawn filtered through the trees, casting a soft golden glow over the forest. Alex lay on the cold, damp ground, watching the remnants of the bunker smolder and crumble in the distance. The violent tremors had subsided, leaving a haunting silence in their wake. The once dark night had given way to the gentle promise of a new day, but the trauma of the night's events lingered heavily in Alex's mind. Every muscle ached as Alex slowly pushed himself to his feet. The documents, now slightly crumpled and placed in his rucksack, were the crucial evidence of the horrifying plot he'd uncovered. Exhausted but driven by the urgent need to get help, Alex stumbled through the forest, each step a reminder of the narrow escape from the nightmarish underground labyrinth. The tranquil beauty of the morning forest stood in stark contrast to the terror and chaos Alex had just endured. Birds chirped in the distance, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves overhead, creating an almost surreal sense of peace. Yet Alex's mind was a whirlwind of fear, determination, and lingering panic. He had to find someone, anyone who could help bring the dark conspiracy to light. As he trudged onward, his legs threatening to give way, Alex heard voices in the distance. He paused, listening intently. The voices grew louder, accompanied by the crunch of footsteps on the forest floor. A surge of hope and relief washed over Alex as he realized it was a search party. "Over here," Alex called out, his voice hoarse and weak. "I'm here." Within moments, a group of searchers appeared, their faces a mix of relief and concern. They hurried over to Alex, offering support and water. "We've been looking for you all night," one of them said. "Are you okay? What happened?" Alex shook his head, still trying to process everything. I found something," he managed to say, holding up the documents. "You need to see this. There's a bunker. Terrible things. Clones." The words tumbled out in disjointed fragments, but the urgency in Alex's voice conveyed the gravity of the situation. The search team exchanged worried glances, but their leader nodded. "All right, let's get you to safety first. We'll contact the authorities and get this sorted out." Supported by the team, Alex began the journey back through the forest. Each step brought him closer to civilization, but the weight of what he'd discovered remained heavy on his shoulders. The sinister plot to clone Nazi war criminals and destabilize the government was a reality that could not be ignored. As they emerged from the forest, the rising sun painted the sky in hues of pink and gold, a hopeful contrast to the darkness he'd just escaped. Alex knew that the fight was far from over. He would need to tell his story, present the evidence, and ensure that those people responsible for the horrific conspiracy were brought to justice. But for now, in the gentle light of morning, surrounded by the comforting presence of the rescue team, Alex allowed himself a moment of respite. The nightmare had ended, and a new battle for the truth was about to begin. Alex sat in the back of an emergency vehicle, a warm blanket draped over his shoulders. The comforting hum of the engine and the distant murmur of rescue team members was reassuring. He clutched a cup of hot coffee, the steam rising and mingling with the crisp morning air. Exhaustion tugged at his eyelids, but the adrenaline and fear kept him alert. As the rescue team continued their work, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. How had they known he was out there? He hadn't told anyone where he was going to hike, nor had he made any attempt to contact emergency services. His gaze drifted over to the rescuers, studying their faces and movements. It was then that Alex noticed a peculiar detail, a small, discreet pin on one of the team members' jackets. It was an eagle, clutching a swastika in its talons. This was a symbol Alex had seen in the bunker's documents. A chill ran down his spine. His eyes darted around, noting other subtle signs. A peculiar insignia on a patch, the way certain members exchanged knowing glances. Panic rose as the realization set in. The conspiracy extended far beyond the confines of the forest bunker. The very people supposed to rescue and protect him might be part of the sinister plot. One of the team members, a stern-looking man with an authoritative air, approached Alex. His friendly smile did not reach his eyes. "You did well to survive out there," he said, his voice tinged with a patronizing undertone. "We'll take you somewhere safe, get you the help you need." Alex's heart pounded. He couldn't trust these people. The documents in his possession felt like a lifeline, a fragile thread of hope against a vast, insidious web. "I need to get these to the authorities," Alex insisted, his voice trembling but resolute. "People need to know what's happening." The man's smile faltered for a brief moment, his eyes hardening. Of course," he said smoothly. "We'll make sure this information gets to the right people." But Alex knew better. His mind was racing, searching for a way out. He couldn't go with these people, couldn't allow the evidence to fall into their hands. He was desperate. I need some air," Alex said, feigning a need to step away. "Just for a moment." The man nodded, his gaze never leaving Alex. "Stay close," he warned, but Alex had no intention of doing so. As soon as they were out of immediate sight, Alex bolted, running towards the tree line. The forest, once a place of terror, now offered a chance for escape. The shouts of the rescuers turned conspirators echoed behind him, but Alex didn't look back. He had to reach someone trustworthy, someone outside this tangled web of deceit. The knowledge they carried was too important, the threat too great. Finally, he reached a road and flagged down a passing car. The driver, an elderly woman with kind eyes, looked startled but concerned. "What happened to you?" she asked, helping Alex into the car. "Please," Alex gasped. "Take me to the nearest police station. It's urgent." As the car sped away, Alex looked back one last time at the receding forest. The nightmare was far from over. The conspiracy was potentially vast, its tendrils reaching into places of supposed safety and trust. The fight against this hidden menace was only just beginning. Alex took the documents out of his rucksack and looked through them once again, knowing that the true scale of the threat was much larger than he'd previously imagined. The sun climbed higher, casting a deceptive light on a world that seemed peaceful, but that also hid dark secrets. The sense of lingering dread was profound, the implication clear. The battle against the resurrected evil was far from over, and now Alex was irrevocably part of it. Part 2. The Hidden Menace continues. The sun was just beginning to rise over the small, seemingly peaceful town nestled on the edge of the dense forest. The old lady had dropped him at the edge of town at his own request. Golden light bathed the quaint streets and modest houses, creating a deceptive serenity that masked the horrors Alex had narrowly escaped. The town, with its picturesque appearance, seemed like the perfect place to find refuge. However, the fear and paranoia clinging to Alex's mind made it impossible to fully trust the tranquil facade. Alex stumbled down the main road, his legs heavy with exhaustion and his breath ragged. Every step was a reminder of the narrow escape from the underground bunker, where a terrifying conspiracy to clone Nazi war criminals had been uncovered. The weight of the documents he carried felt like a lifeline, tangible evidence of the nightmarish plot that he was determined to expose. His thoughts were a whirlwind of panic and determination. He needed to find help, someone who could understand the gravity of what he'd discovered and assist him in bringing it to light. The elderly woman who'd driven him this far had been kind, her concern genuine. Yet her part in his escape felt like a blur, her presence fading into the background as he focused on his immediate goal. The town's police station came into view, a modest building with a welcoming facade. Relief washed over Alex at this point, mingled with an undercurrent of apprehension. He had to be cautious. The conspiracy he'd stumbled upon was vast, its tendrils reaching far beyond the forest bunker. This was a place of law and order. Surely he'd find someone here who could help him. Alex pushed open the door to the station and stepped inside. The cool, sterile air contrasted sharply with the forest's musty scent. An officer behind the desk looked up, offering a polite smile. "Can I help you?" the officer asked, his tone friendly but professional. Alex opened his mouth to respond, but his words caught in his throat as his eyes landed on a symbol on the wall behind the desk. It was subtle, easily overlooked, but to Alex it was unmistakable. The same symbol he'd seen in the Nazi bunker, an insignia of the dark conspiracy he was fleeing from. His heart raced. The walls of the station seemed to close in, the air growing thick and suffocating. He couldn't stay here. This place was not safe. The conspiracy was closer than he'd imagined, even in this seemingly idyllic town. Without a word, Alex turned and bolted out of the station, ignoring the puzzled calls from the officer. He had to get away, but where could he go? Panic surged as he scanned the streets, searching for a safe haven. Just then, a car pulled up beside him, and a woman leaned out of the window. "Get in," she urged, her voice urgent and filled with concern. "Quickly, before they see you." Alex hesitated for a fraction of a second, and then made a split-second decision. He climbed into the car and the woman sped away, the police station receding in the distance. The officers didn't follow, but the sense of danger remained palpable. As they drove, the woman glanced at Alex, her expression serious. "You're lucky I found you. There are people in this town who can't be trusted." Alex's heart pounded as he processed her words. He'd narrowly escaped one trap, only to find himself in another web of uncertainty. Who was this woman? Could he truly trust her? The car sped along the winding roads, leaving the small town behind and heading deeper into the countryside. The woman's face was set in a determined expression, her eyes focused on the road ahead. Alex sat in the passenger seat, his mind racing with questions and uncertainties. The documents in his hands felt heavy with the weight of their secrets, and he clung to them as a lifeline. After what felt like an eternity, the woman pulled into the parking lot of a secluded motel, its weathered exterior suggesting it hadn't seen much business in recent years. She turned off the engine and looked at Alex with a mixture of concern and resolve. "My name's Lisa," she said, extending a hand. "I'm sorry for the abrupt introduction. We don't have much time. My boyfriend Tom was killed in those woods after he discovered the bunker. He was trying to gather evidence to expose the conspiracy, just like you." Alex shook her hand, his grip firm despite his exhaustion. "I'm Alex. Thank you for helping me. I don't know who to trust anymore." Lisa nodded, her expression softening. "I understand. It's hard to know who's involved and who isn't. That's why I've been working alone, gathering as much evidence as I can. When I heard the emergency broadcast about someone loose in the forest, I knew I had to find you before they did." They exited the car and Lisa led Alex to a room at the far end of the motel. The room was small and sparsely furnished, but it offered a sense of temporary refuge from the chaos outside. Lisa closed the door behind them and motioned for Alex to sit at the small table by the window. "Right, show me what you have," she said. Her voice was steady but filled with urgency. Alex spread the documents on the table, pointing out key pieces of information. Photographs, schematics, and journal entries detailing the Nazi cloning operation. Lisa's eyes widened as she absorbed the details, her expression one of apparent horror. "Oh, this confirms everything Tom found," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "They're not just planning to clone these war criminals. They're already doing it. The infiltration has started and it's spreading." A sense of relief washed over Alex as he realized he wasn't alone in this fight. However, this relief was short-lived. As they continued to discuss their findings, Alex's ears perked up at the sound of Lisa's phone vibrating on the table. She picked it up, glanced at the screen, and excused herself. I need to take this call," she said, stepping out onto the balcony and closing the door behind her. Alex watched her through the window, his mind racing with suspicion. He couldn't hear the details of her conversation, but the language was unmistakable. She was speaking German. His heart pounded in his chest, a cold wave of paranoia washing over him. Why was she speaking German? Was she in contact with the very people they were trying to expose? He recalled the strange lack of pursuit from the police and the frightening familiarity of the symbol in the station. Could Lisa be part of the conspiracy, luring him into a false sense of security? He had to be careful. The walls of trust were closing in, and he couldn't afford to let his guard down. Lisa returned, her expression unreadable. "I'm sorry about that," she said, pocketing her phone. "Just some contacts I'm working with to get this story out." Alex nodded, forcing a smile. "I understand. We need all the help we can get." But as they continued to discuss their next steps, Alex's mind remained on high alert. The fight against the hidden menace was far from over, and now even his newfound ally was under scrutiny. The line between friend and foe had blurred, and the path to exposing the conspiracy was growing ever more treacherous. As night fell over the secluded motel, the shadows lengthened. Inside the small room, Alex sat on the edge of the bed, his mind racing. Lisa was in the bathroom, the sound of running water muffling any conversation. He knew that he had to find out if she was truly an ally or another player in this sinister plot. His eyes darted around the room, finally landing on her bag, which she carelessly placed on a chair. With a quick glance towards the bathroom, Alex moved silently across the room and opened the bag. His heart pounded as he rifled through its contents. A wallet, a change of clothes, some toiletries, and a stack of documents bound by a rubber band. Alex's hands trembled as he carefully extracted the documents. He flipped through them, his eyes widening with each page. There were maps of the forest, detailed sketches of the bunker, and photographs of the same Nazi symbols he'd seen before. One photograph in particular caught his eye. It was of Lisa, standing next to a group of men in military uniforms, their faces stern and unyielding. A chill ran down Alex's spine. The documents also included correspondence in German, filled with technical jargon and references to genetic experiments. It was undeniable. These papers linked Lisa to the conspiracy. But why had she helped him? Was she playing a deeper game? Or was there something he wasn't seeing? He quickly returned the documents to the bag, his mind a whirl of confusion and dread. Just as he finished, the bathroom door creaked open and Lisa stepped out, drying her hands with a towel. She smiled at him, but Alex couldn't shake the unease gnawing at his insides. "You okay?" she asked, sensing his tension. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Alex forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow even to his ears. "Just tired, I guess. It's been a long day." Lisa nodded, sitting down across from him. "We should get some rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out our next move." As she spoke, Alex's mind raced. He was torn, unsure of what to believe. If Lisa was part of the conspiracy, she was incredibly good at hiding it. But the documents couldn't be ignored. His sense of isolation deepened, a paranoia twisting his thoughts into knots. That night, Alex lay awake on the bed, listening to Lisa's steady breathing. A sense of betrayal troubled him greatly, making it impossible to find any comfort in sleep. The revelation that Lisa might be connected to the conspiracy had thrown him into a deeper spiral of distrust. He knew he needed to remain vigilant, but the uncertainty was a heavy burden, threatening to crush him. As dawn approached, Alex realized that his survival depended on his ability to discern truth from deception. The conspiracy was larger and more insidious than he'd imagined, and the lines between ally and enemy were blurred beyond recognition. Alex felt more alone than ever, battling not only the external threats, but the creeping doubt within his own mind. The morning light filtered through the thin curtains of the motel room, casting a pale glow on the room's sparse furniture. Alex sat at the small table, the documents he'd found the night before spread out before him. He knew he just couldn't keep his suspicions bottled up any longer. It was time for answers. Lisa emerged from the bathroom, her hair damp and face freshly washed. She smiled at Alex, but the warmth in her eyes couldn't dispel the cold knot of dread in his stomach. Taking a deep breath, Alex steeled himself for the confrontation. "Lisa, we need to talk," he said, his voice steady despite the anxiety gnawing at him. She looked at him curiously and sat down across from him. "Sure, what's on your mind?" Alex pushed the documents towards her, his gaze unwavering. "I found these in your bag last night. They suggest you might be connected to the conspiracy we're trying to expose. And then there's a phone call you made in German. I need to know the truth. Are you with them?" Lisa's eyes widened in surprise, and then narrowed with anger. "You went through my things?" she snapped, her tone defensive. "Those documents are part of the evidence I've been gathering. And as for the phone call, I was speaking to a contact who's been helping me. It's not what you think." Alex shook his head, his suspicion unyielding. "I can't take that risk, Lisa. I need to know if I can trust you." Now the tension in the room was unmistakable. Lisa's expression hardened, and Alex could see the determination in her eyes. "You don't have a choice," she said, her voice cold. "If you can't trust me, then we're both in danger." Before Alex could react, Lisa lunged at him, trying to grab the documents from the table. The two struggled, knocking over the chairs and scattering papers across the floor. Alex fought to keep hold of the evidence, but Lisa's strength surprised him. She was ruthless, her desperation driving her actions. In the midst of the struggle, Alex managed to push Lisa away, sending her crashing into the dresser. She groaned in pain but quickly regained her footing, her eyes blazing with fury. Realizing that he couldn't win the fight on strength alone, Alex made a quick decision. He grabbed a heavy lamp from the bedside table and swung it at Lisa, catching her off guard. The lamp struck her head with a sickening thud, and she crumpled to the floor unconscious. Panting and shaking, Alex dropped the lamp and backed away. He hadn't meant to hurt her so badly, but he knew he had no other choice. He quickly gathered the scattered documents and stuffed them into his backpack. He couldn't stay here. She might have already alerted others to his presence. As he fled the motel room, Alex cast one last glance at Lisa, lying motionless on the floor. Guilt and doubt consumed him, but he pushed these feelings aside. His survival and the exposure of the conspiracy were all that mattered now. He sprinted across the motel parking lot, ducking behind cars and weaving through the rows. His heart pounded as he made his way towards the road, desperately searching for a way out. But he couldn't stop. The danger was too great, and he had no idea how many people were involved in the conspiracy. Reaching the main road, Alex spotted a bus stop in the distance. With a final burst of energy, he ran towards it, praying for a ride that would take him far away from this nightmare. The fight for survival had reached a fever pitch, and every second counted. As he waited for the bus, Alex scanned his surroundings, half expecting to see someone coming after him. The paranoia was relentless. He knew he couldn't afford to let his guard down. He had to stay one step ahead, to keep moving, to survive. The bus finally arrived and Alex climbed aboard, collapsing into a seat at the back. He looked out the window as the town faded into the distance, a feeling of relief swirling in his chest. He'd escaped the motel, but the conspiracy was still out there, vast and insidious. As the bus carried Alex away from the isolated motel and into the broader countryside, he allowed himself a brief moment of relief. The immediate danger seemed to be behind him, but the paranoia, of course, lingered, eating away at the edges of his mind. He needed to stay vigilant. His destination was the nearest large city, where he hoped to find a way to expose the conspiracy. After several tense hours, the bus pulled into the bustling city terminal. Alex stepped off, blending into the crowd of commuters. The noise and movement were a stark contrast to the quiet, sinister events of the past few days. He moved quickly, his eyes darting around for any signs of pursuit. His heart pounded with a mixture of fear and determination as he navigated the unfamiliar streets. Exhausted and desperate, Alex stumbled into a small cafe, hoping to catch his breath and formulate a plan. As he sat at a corner table, sipping a cup of coffee, he noticed a man across the room staring at him with keen interest. The man, in his mid-30s, had the look of someone who'd seen too much and yet was always searching for more. The man approached Alex, a cautious yet determined look in his eyes. "You look like you've been through hell," he said, his voice low and steady. "Name's Ben. I'm a journalist investigating some strange activities in the area. Mind if I sit?" Alex nodded, too wary to refuse. As Ben took a seat, Alex quickly summarized his harrowing ordeal. The discovery of the bunker, the cloning conspiracy, and his narrow escape from the motel. Ben listened intently, his eyes widening as Alex described the details. "Well, I've been hearing rumors about a secretive group operating in the region," Ben said, leaning closer. "But this is bigger than I imagined. If what you're saying is true, we need to get this story out immediately." Alex felt a glimmer of hope. "Can you help me? Well, I have evidence, but I need a platform to expose it. I don't know who to trust anymore." Ben nodded, his expression firm. "I can help. I have contacts in the media who will listen. We need to be careful. If this conspiracy is as extensive as you say, we can't afford any mistakes." Ben offered Alex a temporary safe haven, a small secure apartment where they could lay low and strategize. As they made their way to the apartment, Alex felt a growing sense of relief. For the first time in days, he wasn't alone. He'd found someone who believed him, someone who could help him fight back against the hidden menace. Inside the apartment, they spread out the documents on the kitchen table. Ben took photos and notes, his investigative skills bringing a sense of order to the chaos. And together they crafted a plan to expose the conspiracy, leveraging Ben's media contacts to ensure the story reached a wide audience. As night fell, the apartment felt like a sanctuary. a place where they could breathe and think clearly. The sense of immediate danger had lessened, replaced by a cautious optimism. Alex still felt the weight of paranoia and distrust, but with Ben's help, he had a new sense of purpose. "Tomorrow we'll start reaching out to my contacts," Ben said, his voice filled with determination. "We'll make sure the world knows about this. You've been through a lot, Alex, but you're not alone anymore. We'll get through this together." Alex nodded, a wave of gratitude washing over him. The fight felt like it was far from over, but for the first time he felt a renewed sense of hope. With Ben's help, he had a chance to expose the conspiracy and bring those responsible to justice. The battle against the hidden menace continued, but now Alex wasn't facing it alone. The morning sun cast a warm glow through the apartment windows as Alex and Ben prepared to make their move. The air was filled with a sense of urgency and purpose as they packed the documents and readied themselves to meet Ben's media contacts. Alex felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. They were finally taking action to expose the conspiracy. As Ben stepped into the other room to make a final phone call, Alex took a moment to review their plans one last time. His eyes fell on a folder that Ben had left open on the table. It was filled with photographs and notes, meticulously organized. But something about the photos caught Alex's attention. He picked up one of the images, his heart skipping a beat as he recognized a face among a group of men in military uniforms. It was the same elderly man he'd seen in the bunker, the leader of the Nazi cloning operation. A cold wave of dread washed over Alex. He flipped through the documents with growing urgency, his hands trembling. There were letters and notes in German, similar to the ones he'd found in Lisa's bag. And then he noticed something chilling. A symbol, subtly embossed on the corner of a document, matching the one he'd seen in the police station. Ben re-entered the room, his phone call finished. "Ready to go?" he asked, a smile on his face. Alex's mind raced. Could it be possible? Was Ben part of the conspiracy too? The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. The infiltration was deeper and more pervasive than he'd imagined. He'd walked into another trap. Feigning calm, Alex nodded. "Yeah, just about. I need to use the restroom first, though." Ben's eyes flickered with suspicion, but he nodded. "Sure, take your time." In the bathroom, Alex splashed water on his face, trying to steady his nerves. He had to get out of there, but how? If Ben was part of the conspiracy, he was already in grave danger. He couldn't confront Ben directly. He needed a plan. Exiting the bathroom, Alex forced a smile. "All right, let's do this." They left the apartment and headed toward Ben's car. As they drove through the city, Alex's mind was in overdrive, searching for a way to escape. He had to find someone he could trust, but how could he be sure of anyone anymore? As they approached a busy intersection, Alex saw his chance. "Ben, pull over here. I need to grab something from the store real quick." Ben's eyes narrowed slightly, but he nodded and pulled over. "Okay, but make it quick." Alex jumped out of the car and darted into the crowded store. Once inside, he maneuvered through the aisles, slipping out of the back entrance. He ran through alleyways, his heart pounding, desperately trying to put as much distance between himself and Ben as possible. Reaching a bus stop, Alex caught his breath and waited for the next bus. As he boarded, he glanced around, paranoid and on edge. The realization that the conspiracy had infiltrated so deeply left him feeling more isolated than ever. The bus rumbled through the city, and Alex's thoughts were a whirlwind of fear. He needed to find a new ally, someone outside the reach of the conspiracy. But who could he trust? The scale of the threat was immense, and the fight against this hidden menace was only beginning. As the bus took him away from the city, Alex stared out the window, a sense of lingering dread settling over him. In this world where trust was a luxury he could no longer afford, Alex braced himself for the long fight ahead, knowing that the hidden menace of the Nazi cloning conspiracy was far from defeated. Part 3. Return to the forest. The streets were a blur as Alex navigated his way through the crowded sidewalks, his heart pounding. After narrowly escaping the clutches of a shadowy conspiracy, he knew he had to find someone he could truly trust. Lisa and Ben may have been trustworthy, but he could just never have been sure about either of them. The way they both turned up in his life at the perfect moment was simply too good to be true. Consequently, every face in the crowd now seemed suspicious, every shadow a potential threat. The paranoia was suffocating, but Alex clung to one hope: Professor Cornelius McGregor. Cornelius had been one of Alex's most respected professors during his college years, an expert in World War II history with an unyielding dedication to uncovering the truth. If anyone could help him make sense of the horrifying evidence he'd gathered, it was Cornelius. Alex had managed to track him down to a small town not far from the city, where the professor lived a quiet, secluded life. Reaching the town's last remaining payphone, Alex dialed the number he'd found through an old college contact. His hands shook as he waited for the line to connect. After what felt like an eternity, a familiar, gravelly voice answered. "Hello, this is Cornelius McGregor." "Professor McGregor, it's Alex Thompson. I need your help." There was a brief pause, then a tone of concern. "Alex, it's been years. What's going on?" Alex quickly explained his situation: the discovery of the Nazi bunker, the cloning conspiracy, and his escape from those who sought to silence him. Cornelius listened without interruption, absorbing the gravity of Alex's words. "Meet me at my house," Cornelius finally said. "We'll figure this out together." Sometime later, Alex arrived at the professor's home, a quaint ivy-covered cottage on the outskirts of town. Cornelius greeted him at the door, his expression a mix of surprise and worry. He ushered Alex inside, offering him a seat in a cozy study lined with books and historical artifacts. Alex laid out the documents he'd risked his life to obtain, detailing the cloning experiments and the identities of those involved. Cornelius examined each piece of evidence with meticulous care, his eyes widening as the full scope of the conspiracy became clear. "This is unbelievable," Cornelius murmured. "But I believe you, Alex. This isn't the first time I've come across whispers of such dark projects, but nothing as concrete as this." Relief washed over Alex. For the first time in days, he felt a glimmer of hope. What do we do now? Cornelius leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. "We need to investigate further. The bunker you found might hold more secrets, more evidence that we can use to expose this operation. We need to be careful, though. If what you're saying is true, these people are extremely dangerous." Alex nodded, determination hardening his features. "I'm ready to go back. We have to stop them." The decision was made, and they began to plan their return to the forest. Cornelius's knowledge and resources would be invaluable, and together they stood a better chance of uncovering the full extent of the conspiracy. But as they plotted their course, a sense of unease lingered. The road ahead was fraught with danger, and trust was a fragile commodity in a world where enemies lurked in the shadows. Little did they know, the true danger was closer than they could have imagined. Cornelius's garage was a treasure trove of survival gear and historical artifacts. As he packed his jeep with supplies, flashlights, rope, first aid kits, and camping equipment, Alex recounted every detail of his escape from the bunker. Cornelius listened intently, occasionally nodding or asking pointed questions to clarify specific points. "We'll need to be prepared for anything," Cornelius said, tossing a map onto the jeep's hood. "The forest is dense, and if the bunker was destroyed, there might be hidden passages or other entrances we can use." Alex nodded, still jittery from his recent encounters. "We can't trust anyone. The conspiracy seems bigger than we thought." As they finished packing, Cornelius handed Alex a satellite phone. "In case we get separated. And Alex, stay vigilant. They might be watching." The journey began smoothly enough, with the town fading into the rearview mirror and the forested landscape taking over. However, Alex's sense of unease grew with each passing mile. Every car that appeared in their vicinity felt like a potential threat. He noticed a black sedan that seemed to reappear at every turn, always maintaining a discreet distance. "Hey, do you see that?" Alex pointed to the rearview mirror. Cornelius glanced back and frowned. "Oh, could be a coincidence. But let's not take any chances." The winding road took them through small towns and long rural stretches, where they stopped for gas and supplies. At one such stop, a stranger in the gas station stared a bit too long at Alex, making his skin crawl. They quickly refueled and got back on the road. As night fell, they tuned into a local radio station for news and updates. The broadcaster's voice crackled through the static, reporting on a recent murder in the nearby town. "Authorities are searching for a suspect in the murder of a young woman, identified as Lisa Weigand. Witnesses described the suspect as a man in his late 20s, dark hair and a medium build. The investigation is ongoing." Alex's heart sank. Well, the description was vague, but it could easily fit him. He turned to Cornelius, his voice shaking. "They're framing me. She was knocked out, but definitely alive when I left her." Cornelius kept his eyes on the road, his expression stern. "It's a tactic to throw you off balance, to make you doubt yourself and those around you. We need to stay focused." But what if..." Alex began, but Cornelius cut him off. "Trust in the plan, Alex. We'll find the truth in that bunker." As they drove deeper into the forest, the sense of being watched never left them. Shadows loomed larger, and every rustle in the undergrowth felt like an approaching threat. Their headlights cut through the darkness, revealing the narrow, winding path that led to their destination. The atmosphere was tense, and Alex's paranoia was growing with every moment. But Cornelius's calm demeanor was a steadying influence. They finally reached a secluded clearing and set up camp, their nerves more on edge than ever. As they settled down for the night, Cornelius laid out the blueprints and documents that they'd brought. "Tomorrow, we return to the bunker. We need to be prepared for anything." Alex nodded, gripping the satellite phone tightly. "I just hope we're not too late." Cornelius's eyes were sharp and filled with purpose. "We'll uncover the truth, Alex, and we'll make sure the world knows." Well, the night was a long and restless one, filled with the sounds of the forest and the ever-present feeling of eyes watching from the darkness. The journey into the heart of the conspiracy had truly begun now, and there was no turning back. The morning sun filtered through the dense canopy of the forest, casting dappled shadows on the ground. Cornelius and Alex sat in the jeep, reviewing the blueprints and documents spread across the dashboard. The air was still thick with tension, but also with a sense of purpose. Cornelius traced a finger over the blueprints, his brow furrowed in concentration. These plans suggest there might be more to the bunker than we initially thought. Hidden rooms, perhaps even deeper underground levels. If we can find these, we might uncover the full extent of this conspiracy." Alex nodded, his eyes wide with determination. "We need to expose this. The world has to know what's happening." Cornelius looked up, meeting Alex's gaze. "It's dangerous, Alex. They'll stop at nothing to keep this secret. You sure you're ready for this?" Alex took a deep breath, the weight of his resolve settling on his shoulders. "I have to be. Too many lives are at stake." With their commitment solidified, they packed up their campsite and loaded the jeep. The forest loomed ahead, a wall of green and shadow that held both danger and the promise of truth. They drove on in silence, the only sound the crunch of gravel beneath the tires and the distant call of birds. As they neared the location of the bunker, Alex couldn't shake the feeling of being watched still. The black sedan had appeared again, trailing them at a distance. His paranoia flared, but he forced himself to focus. They couldn't afford to be distracted now. The jeep jolted over rough terrain, finally coming to a stop at the edge of the clearing where the bunker had been. The site was overgrown, nature having reclaimed what had been disturbed. Cornelius and Alex climbed out, surveying the area. "We need to find the entrance again," Cornelius said, shouldering a backpack. If the bunker was destroyed, there might be debris covering it. Pushing aside brush and fallen branches, the forest was eerily quiet. The usual sounds of wildlife muted, as if the trees themselves held their breath. After what felt like hours, they found it. A partially collapsed entrance hidden beneath a thick layer of leaves and dirt. Cornelius inspected the opening. "Right, this is it. Stay close and be ready for anything." They descended into the darkness, flashlights cutting through the gloom. The bunker was a twisted maze of rubble and intact passages. Yet there were signs of recent activity. Footprints in the dust. Disturbed debris. As they delved deeper, they stumbled upon a hidden door, cleverly concealed behind a false wall. Cornelius pushed it open, revealing a set of stairs leading further down. Alex's heart pounded in his chest, a mix of fear and anticipation. "This must be one of the hidden levels," Cornelius whispered. "Stay alert." The air grew colder as they descended, the walls closing in around them. They reached the bottom, stepping into a room filled with advanced equipment and documents strewn across tables. It was clear that this operation was more extensive than they'd imagined. Cornelius sifted through the papers, his eyes widening as he read. These documents, they detail plans for infiltrating high levels of government and society. This goes far beyond what we thought. "We have to get this out to the world. People need to know," Alex said. Cornelius nodded, stuffing the documents into his backpack. "We need to move quickly. If they find us here..." Before he could finish, the sound of footsteps echoed through the corridor. Alex and Cornelius exchanged a glance, their fear intense. They were no longer alone in the bunker. Determined to uncover the full truth, they pressed on, navigating the labyrinth of rooms and passages. The sense of urgency and danger hung over them, but their resolve remained strong. They had to see this through, no matter the cost. They moved deeper into the bunker, their footsteps echoing in the narrow corridors. Suddenly they came across a section of the wall that seemed different from the rest. Cornelius pressed against it, and a concealed door swung open, revealing a staircase leading further down. "Right, here we go," Cornelius said, gripping Alex's shoulder. "Stay close." They descended the stairs, the air growing colder with each step. At the bottom, they found themselves in a room filled with advanced equipment and scattered documents. The walls were lined with blueprints and charts detailing the expansion of the conspiracy. "This is bigger than we thought," Cornelius said, his voice filled with awe and fear. "They're planning something massive." Before Alex could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed through the corridor. Shadows danced on the walls as figures approached. Alex's heart raced, and he tightened his grip on the flashlight, ready for anything. Suddenly, they were ambushed. Dark-clad figures emerged from the shadows, weapons drawn. These were not human foes, at least not anymore. They appeared to be some strange hybrid mutations, half human, half ape. They were powerful, but slow, probably a product of whatever experiments had been conducted here. A violent struggle ensued, with Alex and Cornelius fighting for their lives. Alex swung his flashlight, striking one of the attackers, while Cornelius used his knowledge of the terrain to outmaneuver them. The fight was brutal and desperate. Alex felt a surge of adrenaline, though, as he dodged a blow and managed to disarm one of the assailants. Cornelius tackled another, using his weight to pin the attacker to the ground. Well, the attackers were relentless, but Alex and Cornelius fought with everything they had. In the chaos, Alex spotted a folder on a nearby table. He lunged for it, grabbing the documents and shoving them into his backpack. "We need to get out of here," he shouted to Cornelius. They managed to fend off the last of their attackers and stumbled into a hidden passageway. As they ran, Alex glanced back, seeing the fallen figures slowly recovering. They needed to move fast. They burst out of the bunker into the cold night air, gasping for breath. Cornelius led them to a concealed spot in the forest where they could catch their breath. "Yeah, you okay?" he asked, his voice strained. "Yeah," Alex panted, clutching the backpack. "We need to keep moving. We have the evidence now." They pushed on, navigating the forest with a further sense of urgency. Every step was a reminder of the danger they faced, but the knowledge of what they'd found drove them forward. They'd discovered blueprints and documents that revealed the true scale of the conspiracy, plans that extended far beyond what they'd imagined. As they reached the edge of the forest, the first light of dawn was breaking through the trees. They'd survived the night, but their fight was far from over. This conspiracy was vast and powerful, and they were only two against a hidden army. But they had the truth, and with it, the hope of exposing the darkness that lurked beneath the surface. They knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger, but they were ready to face it together. As they climbed into the jeep and drove away from the forest, Alex glanced at Cornelius, a determined glint in his eye. "We have to stop them." Cornelius nodded. "And we will, no matter what it takes." As the trees blurred past, Alex glanced back, half expecting to see their attackers emerging from the shadows. But for now, they were alone. Safe, but only for the moment. Cornelius drove with fierce determination, navigating the rough terrain until they reached a more secure, remote spot where they could regroup. He parked the jeep under a thick canopy of trees, ensuring they were well hidden from any aerial surveillance. "Right, we should be safe here for a bit," Cornelius said, cutting the engine. The silence that followed was both a relief and a reminder of their precarious situation. They took a moment to catch their breaths. The forest around them was quiet, the only sounds being the distant call of birds and the rustle of leaves. Cornelius pulled out the folder Alex had grabbed during the fight and spread its contents across the jeep's hood. "Well, let's see what we've got," he muttered, his fingers deftly sorting through the papers. Alex leaned in, his eyes scanning the documents. Blueprints of the bunker, detailed notes on the cloning process, and lists of high-profile targets for infiltration were all there. But what caught his attention was a map marked with red pins, indicating various locations worldwide. "This is huge," Alex said, his voice barely a whisper. "They've got operations everywhere." Cornelius nodded, his expression grim. "This isn't just a national threat. It's global. They've been planning this for decades." The realization hit Alex hard. The scale of the conspiracy was overwhelming, but it also fueled his resolve. "Right, we have to expose this. People need to know." Cornelius agreed. "We can't trust just anyone with this information. We need to go to people we know are reliable. Trusted academics, investigative journalists, people who can get the word out without getting silenced." He pulled out his phone and began making a list of contacts. "I know some people at major universities and media outlets. We can start there." Alex nodded, feeling a surge of hope. "What about the police and the government?" Cornelius shook his head. "We can't risk it. This conspiracy has too many tentacles. We need to build a case so solid that it can't be ignored, no matter who tries to suppress it." As they finalized their plans, the reality of their situation sank in. They were up against a powerful, shadowy organization with resources far beyond their own. But they had the truth on their side, and they were determined to see it through. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows through the trees. Cornelius started the jeep again, and they began their journey back towards civilization, ready to take the next steps in their fight. "Right, we'll go to the university first," Cornelius said, his voice steady. "There's a historian there I trust completely. From there, we'll start reaching out to the media." Alex looked out of the window, the weight of the evidence in his backpack a constant reminder of their mission. "Yeah, but we'll have to be careful. They'll be looking for us." Cornelius gave a reassuring nod. "We will be. and we'll make sure they can't stop us." As the jeep drove on into the night, the forest behind them fading into darkness, Alex felt a renewed sense of purpose. The fight was far from over, but they'd taken a crucial step. They had the evidence. Now it was time to expose the truth and bring the conspiracy to light. As dawn broke and they approached the outskirts of the university town, Alex and Cornelius parked the jeep in a discreet location and reviewed their plan one last time. The sense of urgency and determination hung heavy in the air. They were about to make the first move in exposing a conspiracy that spanned the globe. Cornelius led Alex to the trusted historian's office in the history department. Dr. Evelyn Hartley had been a mentor to Cornelius and was renowned for her integrity and commitment to truth. They knocked on her door, and she greeted them with a warm, yet puzzled smile. "Cornelius, what brings you here so early? Who's this?" Dr. Hartley asked, ushering them inside. "Evelyn, this is Alex. Look, we need your help. We have evidence of something huge, and we can only trust a few people," Cornelius explained, urgency in his voice. They spent the next hour sharing their findings, laying out the documents and explaining the depth of the conspiracy. Dr. Hartley listened intently, her expression growing more serious with each passing minute. "Wow, this is, beyond anything I've ever encountered," she said finally, looking at Alex and Cornelius. "But if this is true, we need to act quickly and carefully." As they discussed their next steps, Alex began to notice small details around Dr. Hartley's office. A stack of papers with official seals, a briefcase with a distinctive emblem, and a framed certificate that bore a symbol he'd seen in the bunker. His heart sank as suspicion gnawed at him. "Cornelius," Alex interrupted, his voice low and tense. "We need to talk, alone." Cornelius looked puzzled, but nodded, and they stepped outside the office. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Something's off. Did you see those documents in her office? They had the same symbols we saw in the bunker," Alex whispered urgently. Cornelius frowned. "Well, do you, think she might be compromised?" "I don't know, but we can't take any chances. The conspiracy could be deeper than we thought," Alex replied. They returned to the office, trying to mask their unease. Dr. Hartley noticed their tension and raised an eyebrow. "Is, everything all right?" "Fine," Cornelius lied. "We just need to be cautious." They decided to move forward warily, sharing the evidence with Dr. Hartley but keeping critical details to themselves. As they prepared to leave, Alex's paranoia spiked. He noticed Cornelius's phone buzzing with a message that made his blood run cold. An encrypted message with coordinates matching those they'd just visited. Alex pulled Cornelius aside once more. "Look, we're being tracked. We need to go now." Realizing the gravity of the situation, Cornelius and Alex made a quick exit, leaving Dr. Hartley with enough information to raise questions but not enough to endanger them. They hurried back to the jeep, the sense of dread intensifying. As they drove away, Alex's mind raced. "God, Cornelius, we can't trust anyone. The conspiracy is too deep." Cornelius nodded grimly. "Look, we'll go underground. Contact only those we're absolutely certain of. This fight is just beginning." The realization hit them both hard. The Nazi cloning operation had infiltrated every level of society. Government, media, even trusted academic circles. There was no safe place. As they drove into the horizon, they knew they had to continue this fight, expose the truth, and stay one step ahead of their enemies. The road ahead was perilous and uncertain, but they were committed to seeing it through. Alex glanced at Cornelius, a newfound resolve in his eyes. "We won't stop. We'll find a way to bring them down." Cornelius nodded, gripping the steering wheel tightly. "We will, no matter what it takes." The open road stretched before them. a symbol of the long and dangerous journey ahead. The fight against the hidden menace was far from over, and the true scale of the conspiracy was only beginning to unfold. Part 4. Conspiracy's End. The night was still as Alex and Cornelius pulled up to the remote hotel. Its neon sign flickered weakly, casting a sporadic glow that barely pierced the surrounding darkness. The isolation was both a blessing and a curse, providing a temporary sanctuary for the relentless threats that loomed over them. Inside their room, Alex slumped onto the edge of the bed, exhaustion etched into his face. Cornelius locked the door and checked the windows, ensuring that no one had followed them. The silence was heavy, filled with the unspoken fears that neither dared voice. They'd been on the run for what felt like an eternity, their every move shadowed by an invisible enemy. "We need to figure out our next steps," Cornelius said, breaking the silence. His voice was firm, but laced with weariness. Alex nodded, pulling out the bundle of documents they'd risked so much to obtain. Pages filled with damning evidence of the Nazi cloning conspiracy lay before them. Maps, photographs, handwritten notes, all pieces of a puzzle that painted a horrifying picture. "We've turned off our phones to stay off the grid," Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But how do we get this out to the world?" Cornelius ran a hand through his graying hair, eyes scanning the documents. "We need to find someone we can trust. Someone outside the reach of this conspiracy." They sat in contemplation, the weight of their task pressing down on them. The remote hotel was a temporary refuge, but they knew they couldn't stay hidden forever. The right-wing shift in media and politics had provided fertile ground for the conspiracy to thrive, and their window of opportunity was closing fast. As the hours dragged on, they discussed potential allies and the safest ways to disseminate the information. Every plan seemed fraught with danger, each idea tinged with paranoia. The scope of the conspiracy was vast, reaching into the highest echelons of power. This realization was sobering. This wasn't just a fight for their lives, but a battle against an insidious force that had been festering for decades. "We can't trust anyone," Alex murmured, his eyes haunted. "But we have to keep trying." Cornelius nodded in agreement. "We'll find a way. We have to." The night deepened, and they'd come too far to give up now. As they turned off the lights and settled in for a restless night, a single thought lingered in their minds. The real fight was just beginning. In the silence of the motel room, the gravity of their situation began to weigh even heavier on Alex and Cornelius. The more they talked, the clearer it became that the right-wing shift in media and politics was no accident. It was a carefully orchestrated element of the conspiracy, one that had been running smoothly for decades. They could see how the tentacles of this insidious plot had reached into every facet of society, subtly altering public perception and pushing a dangerous agenda. "This has been in motion for so long," Alex said, a shiver running down his spine. "It's like they've been laying the groundwork for generations." Cornelius nodded solemnly. "Yeah, they've embedded themselves deeply. Not just about the cloning. They've been manipulating the system from within, steering it to their advantage." A sense of dread settled over them. The enormity of their task felt overwhelming. But they knew they had to persist. They couldn't let the evidence that they gathered go to waste. Cornelius, driven by a desperate need for a breakthrough, decided to take a risk. "I'm going to turn my phone back on," he said, pulling the device from his pocket. "We need allies, and Dr. Hartley might be our best bet." Alex's eyes widened with concern. "Are you sure that's wise? What if they're tracking us?" Cornelius hesitated and took a deep breath. "We don't have many options left." With a sense of trepidation, he powered up his phone. It buzzed almost immediately, flooding with notifications. Amidst the clutter, messages from Dr. Hartley stood out, urgent and insistent. Cornelius scanned through them, his expression shifting from doubt to curious optimism. "Well, she's been trying to reach me," he said, showing the messages to Alex. "She says she has a plan to expose the conspiracy." Alex leaned forward, reading the messages with growing hope. Do you think we can trust her? Cornelius paused, weighing the risks. I don't know, but we have to take the chance. If she's legit, she could be the key to blowing this wide open. They exchanged a look of mutual understanding, knowing they were stepping into uncertain territory. Cornelius typed a quick response, arranging a meeting at a discreet warehouse location that Dr. Hartley had suggested. The die was now firmly cast. We'll meet her tomorrow, Cornelius said, his voice steady, and we'll find out if she's truly on our side. The motel room had felt like a sanctuary, but now it felt like the starting point of their next perilous journey. They'd rekindled a fragile trust, placing their hopes in Dr. Hartley's hands. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but it was a risk they had to take. Alex and Cornelius drove through the darkened streets, the glow of the city fading as they ventured towards the outskirts. The warehouse loomed in the distance, a silent sentinel in the middle of an industrial wasteland. Each passing minute seemed to stretch into an eternity, the weight of potential betrayal pressing heavily on their minds. Every shadow seemed to harbor unseen threats, and every sound was amplified in the stillness of the night. This feels wrong, Alex muttered, his knuckles white as he gripped the dashboard. What if this is a setup? Cornelius glanced at him, his face grim but determined. We have to take the chance. If Dr. Hartley is truly on our side, this could be our best shot. They pulled into the desolate parking lot, the warehouse towering over them, its windows dark and foreboding. Stepping out of the Jeep, they moved cautiously, their senses on high alert. The air was thick with tension as they approached the entrance, the echo of their footsteps the only sound breaking the silence. Inside, the warehouse was dank and dingy, the shadows creating a maze of uncertainty. As they ventured deeper, they heard a faint sound, a weak, rasping breath. Rounding a corner, they found Ben, the journalist, bound and bruised but alive. Relief washed over them, quickly replaced by dread as they took in his battered condition. Ben, Alex whispered, rushing to his side. What happened? Ben's eyes flickered open, his voice a strained whisper. It's a trap. You have to get out of here now. Before they could react, the sound of footsteps echoed through the warehouse. Dr. Hartley emerged from the shadows, her expression cold and triumphant. Behind her, armed men stepped forward, surrounding Alex and Cornelius. You've done well to get this far, Dr. Hartley said, her voice dripping with mock admiration. But this is where it ends. Alex and Cornelius exchanged a glance of horror and betrayal. Cornelius clenched his fists, his mind racing for a way out. But it was clear they were cornered. Why? Alex demanded, his voice shaking with anger. Why betray us? Dr. Hartley's smile was chilling. The plan has been in motion for decades. You're just collateral damage in a much larger game. The sound of footsteps echoed again, and from the shadows Lisa emerged, very much alive and exuding a malevolent presence. Welcome back, Alex. You've been quite the thorn in our side. Alex's heart sank. Lisa. She smirked. The resemblance to her grandfather, the evil Dr. Ulrich von Schaumann, was unmistakable. My grandfather would be proud. We've come so close to our goal, and now you'll help us solidify our success. The doors to the warehouse slammed shut, sealing their fate. Alex and Cornelius stood side by side, the weight of their predicament sinking in. They were surrounded, betrayed, and out of options. The conspiracy had tightened its grip, perhaps too tightly for them to escape. The oppressive calm of the warehouse was shattered by the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps. From the shadows emerged Ulrich von Schaumann, his presence commanding and sinister. He looked eerily identical to the photographs Alex had seen, a perfect clone of the original Nazi doctor. "Congratulations," von Schaumann said, his voice dripping with cold amusement. "You have come remarkably close to destroying decades of meticulous work. But, alas, it was all in vain." Alex felt a chill run down his spine as von Schaumann's piercing gaze settled on him and Cornelius. The men surrounding them tightened their grip on their weapons, making it clear that any attempt to escape would be futile. "You think you're the first to try and stop us?" von Schaumann continued, his smile widening. "Many have tried, all have failed. The closest anyone got was erasing the life of my original body. As you can see, we have perfected the methods of recreating humans." Desperation surged through Alex. He exchanged a quick glance with Cornelius, a silent agreement passing between them. They had to fight back, even if the odds were against them. With a sudden, fierce determination, Alex lunged at the nearest guard, his fists flying. Cornelius followed suit, using every ounce of strength to fend off their attackers. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he fought with a ferocity born of sheer desperation. He managed to disarm one of the guards, but as he did so, more closed in. Their numbers were overwhelming. Cornelius fought valiantly beside him, but they were outnumbered and overpowered. Every blow they landed was met with twice the force in return. Through the melee, Alex saw Dr. Hartley and Lisa orchestrating the assault, their expressions cold and calculating. Maybe they were clones too. The ultimate betrayal hit him like a physical blow. These were people he'd once trusted, and now they were sealing his fate. "You fools," Dr. Hartley sneered, watching them struggle. "You never had a chance." Lisa stepped forward, her eyes glinting with a twisted satisfaction. "You should have stayed hidden, Alex. You're a loose end we simply can't afford." Von Schaumann observed the scene with a cruel smile, his satisfaction evident. "This is the end for you," he said, his voice echoing through the warehouse. "You will die, and your deaths will be framed to suit our narrative. The public will believe what we want them to believe." With a final, brutal push, the guards subdued Alex and Cornelius. Alex's vision blurred as a guard's fist connected with his jaw, sending him sprawling to the ground. He tasted blood, his strength waning. Cornelius, too, was brought to his knees, his face battered and bruised. He looked at Alex, his eyes filled with regret and defiance. "We tried," he whispered, his voice choked with pain. "We did everything we could." Von Schaumann stepped closer, looking down at them with a mix of contempt and amusement. "Indeed you did," he said, "but in the end it was never enough." The final blow came swiftly. Alex felt a sharp pain, and then darkness enveloped him. The last thing he heard was von Schaumann's chilling laughter, echoing in his mind as he slipped into unconsciousness. Their fight had been valiant, but ultimately futile. The conspiracy had won this battle, and the shadow of its influence would continue to spread, unchallenged and unseen. Alex and Cornelius lay on the cold, hard floor of the warehouse, their bodies battered and their spirits crushed. They were tightly bound, unable to move, their minds reeling from the events that had unfolded. The realization of their helplessness and defeat settled over them with a suffocating shroud. Lisa stood above them, her expression one of cruel satisfaction. "It's over," she said, her voice cold and devoid of any empathy. "You'll take the fall for everything." Von Schaumann's henchmen moved swiftly, planting incriminating evidence on Alex and Cornelius. They carefully arranged the scene to frame them for Lisa's supposed murder. Blood-stained weapons were placed in their hands, and photographs were taken to capture the fabricated crime scene. Dr. Hartley orchestrated the media response with precision. Within hours, sympathetic media outlets began broadcasting the fabricated story. News anchors spoke with solemn faces, reporting that Alex and Cornelius were dangerous criminals who'd been involved in a heinous murder plot. Breaking news. Alex Thompson and Cornelius McGregor, once considered victims, are now suspects in the brutal murder of Lisa Weigand, one anchor reported. Authorities are urging the public to be cautious and report any sightings of these dangerous individuals. Alex's heart sank as he watched the news broadcast from the small, barred window of the room where they were being held. The media's manipulation was complete, and the public was buying the false narrative. The conspiracy had not only silenced them, but also turned them into villains in the eyes of the world. Cornelius, sitting beside Alex, shook his head in despair. "They've covered their tracks perfectly," he said, his voice heavy with defeat. "We've been framed, and there's no way to prove our innocence." The fabricated evidence was airtight, leaving no room for doubt in the minds of the public. As news channels continued to broadcast their supposed guilt, Alex and Cornelius felt powerless to fight back against the overwhelming force of the conspiracy. In the darkness of their confinement, they could hear the faint echoes of celebration from their captors. The conspiracy had won, and its influence continued to spread unchecked. The sense of hopelessness was palpable as Alex and Cornelius realized the full extent of the enemy they were up against. Their fight for truth and justice had ended in tragedy, their efforts buried under a mountain of lies and deceit. The world believed them to be criminals, and the real masterminds behind the conspiracy continued their work, unchallenged and unseen. The dim light filtering through the barred window did little to lift the gloom in the room where Alex and Cornelius were held. Time seemed to stretch endlessly, each minute marked by a heavy, crushing silence. They both knew their fate was sealed. Their capture, the planted evidence, and the relentless media campaign had ensured that their voices would never be heard again. In the early hours of the morning, the door to their cell creaked open. A figure stepped inside, shrouded in the shadows. It was Ulrich von Schaumann, his cold eyes gleaming with triumph. He approached them with a slow, deliberate pace, savoring the moment of his victory. "You fought valiantly," von Schaumann said, his voice dripping with mockery. "But in the end, your efforts were futile. The world will remember you as murderers, not as heroes." Alex and Cornelius exchanged a glance, a silent acknowledgement of their shared fate. They tried to expose the truth, but the conspiracy had been too powerful, too deeply entrenched. With a swift, merciless motion, von Schaumann signaled to his men. Alex and Cornelius were dragged from their cell, their resistance weak and futile. They were taken to a secluded area where their lives were brutally and unceremoniously ended. The truth they'd uncovered died with them, buried under layers of deceit and manipulation. The media, now fully complicit in the conspiracy, broadcast the news of their deaths with a fabricated story of their violent end in a police confrontation. Public opinion was swayed completely against them, ensuring that no one would question the narrative that had been constructed. As days turned into weeks, the sinister plans of the conspiracy continued unabated. The right-wing forces, emboldened by their success, gradually seized control of more aspects of the nation's government and media. Authoritarian shadows spread across the country, with dissenting voices silenced and the populace manipulated into compliance. Well, there you go, my dear friends. I hope you enjoyed the full story there. Not a happy ending. I wanted to write something that didn't have a happy ending. And a little bit of social commentary, but not trying to force it down your throats. But hey, maybe it is. Maybe it is, or it's not. Who knows? What am I talking about? Anyway, another long recording session. So when I try and do these end monologues after a long recording session, they always come out a bit garbled and nonsensical. But anyway, yes, so another one. Thoughts, feelings, anything else you want to say under the comment section below, and I'll try my best to join in the conversation. And there's a story set in North Korea, which I started about 3 years ago. I did the first chapter of what I hoped would become a series, and I finally started returning to that. My classes are finished for the year, so I've got a lot more time on my hands for writing. as you've probably realised. Anyway, I'm really waffling on. So coming up soon will be How I Survived North Korea Part 2. A mixture of supernatural and government conspiracy, all that kind of thing, mixed in together. So hopefully you're going to enjoy that one as well. Well, that is enough for me for today. Back again very soon, my dear friends. Until the next time, very sweet dreams and bye-bye.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams, and bye-bye.